eighth wonder of the world, basically a geek show. And here are your hosts, Mike and Jack.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's episode 44 of Basically a Geek Show. I'm Mike. With me, as always, is Jack.
Things and stuff.
So, interestingly enough, I caught another trailer for the Exodus Gods and Kings movie.
Okay.
Karate Action Moses.
Yeah.
And Christian Bale did the Batman voice when he said, "Let my people go."
You know, that's surrealistically awesome. Like,
let my people go.
It's like you and I got drunk and we're like, hey, let's make a movie about Moses, except we'll have Batman be Moses.
We're gonna get Christian Bale to play Batman, to play Moses.
Exactly. I'm a dude playing a dude disguised as another dude. Yeah.
Where are the Jews?
Where are the Jews? Yeah. Fucking great shit.
I can't wait to see that movie. It's gonna be so fucking absurd.
Now, what would be better would be, you know, if they actually, use one of the lines from Keaton's Batman with the Pharaoh. You wanna get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts.
Oh, you know what? I sincerely hope that, at the end of the movie, after the movie's over, the credits just start rolling over, this shot of, the pyramids in Egypt at sundown. And then you just see, this UFO fly through in the background. I think that'd be hilarious.
Nice.
I mean, if they do it, everyone would, obviously would be a sign that people have lost their goddamn minds, but apparently, losing your goddamn mind means that you get to run a major Hollywood studio these days.
He's the hero the Jews deserve, just not the one they need right now. Oh, Jesus.
No. They're gonna get, Christian Bale plays Jesus next year. That'll be fun. They just do this thing where, Christian Bale plays Batman, playing all of the major biblical figures.
Let he who is without sin among you cast the first stone. Yeah, I can see that no one will have an issue with that at all. It's like you can get away with fucking with Moses a little bit, but, you know, I remember when it was this movie from the late 80s, Last Temptation of Christ. And
Brooklyn accented Jesus.
Right, exactly. And my mother, being the devout caffeine addicted Mormon that she was, had this royal shit fit over this movie. It was just, and I'm like, it was 1986, so I would have been 7.
Gotcha.
And, you know, she's rattling on and raging about high concepts I don't fucking understand. You know.
Why can't Jesus be from Brooklyn? I don't know.
Yeah, why, Mommy, why? You know, she just kept going on saying, it's blasphemous. And I don't know. I tried asking for explanations of these things.
That was probably a mistake.
It was. And all I got was the incoherent ramblings of a mad woman. I don't understand what she said in explanation because it made so little sense that my brain couldn't latch on to enough of it to remember over the years. It was basically the equivalent of so's your face. I don't even think she knew why the movie was considered to be blasphemous. Just that it was because Preacher Man told her so, and that was good enough for her.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not to give, you know, my mother could be fairly intellectual, but sometimes she would just go all fucking retard about shit, and this was one of those times she just went ape shit. The movie theater, on the other side of town where they were playing it had all these always people protesting and shit. So yeah, the moral of the story is, yeah, you probably don't want to. I don't think you can take the liberties with a movie about Jesus that you can about Moses. But I would find it pretty funny if they did.
I'm just imagining Christian, just Christian Bale's Jesus, like that would be amazing.
It really would. It really would.
I don't know. Can we make Judas Bane?
Jesus!
Victory has defeated you!
Oh, Lord. God, we are sorry for what we're saying right now.
I don't know, maybe get Gary Oldman to play Pontius Pilate.
You know, now that could actually work in a vacuum.
Well, yes, because Gary Oldman's fucking awesome.
Yeah, that's the first sensical thing we've said so far this episode.
Needless to say, Gods and Kings comes out Friday, and I can't wait to see something that will probably be a complete butchering of my religious heritage, but I don't care because it looks fucking insane.
Hey, you know what? Mine's had it enough. Now it's your turn.
Remember when Steven Spielberg directed Prince of Egypt and it was a respectful, reverent retelling of the Book of Exodus? Nah, this is like, we're just gonna 300 that shit.
Yeah, no, you know.
We got Batman as Moses, it's all good. But, like I said, people who are making this are obviously out of their minds, and being out of your mind,
Sony!
Yeah, being out of your mind does not stop anyone from, running a major Hollywood studio. Sony has apparently just, I don't know, man. Did the underwhelming box office returns of Amazing Spider-Man 2 just drive everyone running that studio insane?
Yes, I think I don't know. I think they went insane with Spider-Man 3. And they've just been kind of, snorting the nose candy ever since then, and now they're just sitting there fucking naked, shitting in a corner, screaming orders at a stuffed chimpanzee.
So we're gonna get to some Sony superhero talk in a moment, but, before we get to that, we've kind of documented Sony's descent into madness. The latest instance of this isn't even superhero related. So for those who might be aware, Sony did Men in Black, the Men in Black film series, and they did the rebooted 21 Jump Street series, where they rebooted it as a film series. They did the 21 Jump Street movie, and then they released a sequel, 22 Jump Street, which I did not watch because I don't hate myself.
I didn't even watch the first one. I didn't watch the show when I was a kid.
I watched the first one. Yeah, the first one's actually not bad, but the second, I just could tell from the previews that the second wasn't going to be nearly as good.
This, to me, we've often said when we're talking about these remakes of 80s stuff, and we've often said, who asked for this? Mm-hmm. 21 Jump Street is the pinnacle of that. I mean, I don't think anyone... I think the only people that maybe gave a shit about that show might have been like teenage girls or something. Mm-hmm. And I seriously don't think it held enough sway with them over the years for them to be like, oh yeah, I want to go see that. I don't think anyone wanted this shit to begin with. I would not see it. I wouldn't see it right now for free. I wouldn't put the time investment into it. And yeah, sequel and great, but yeah, Men in Black. So now they're wanting to
crossover. Yeah.
So now they're wanting to wipe the taint of this all over Men in Black's face. Not this confused with all over Men in Blackface, because that would just be a whole other movie. And I wouldn't put it past Sony at this point, but yeah. According to why don't they do a reboot of 21 Jump Street with a
reboot of Reboot?
Yes, with an all-female cast.
It honestly wouldn't surprise me if that came out like next week.
And fuck it, Men in Black 2. Let's do the same thing with Men in Black.
Women in Black?
Women in Black. Which could be a movie of an entirely different genre, but we'll just assume, for the sake of this discussion, that it's science fiction comedy. Yeah, you know.
Apparently Sony, thinks that, they can make a Men in Black, 21 Jump Street crossover work. And there's really nothing to stop them from doing this, as they own both franchises.
I don't know, how about God's law of common sense?
Well, the thing is that, I don't know, like, this isn't superhero related, but again, it just seems like Sony, again, we've talked about Sony desperately trying to find some form of quote-unquote cinematic universe to latch onto, because they see what Marvel has been able to do with theirs, and they want some of that, and it's just a mess. And they're like, well, if we combine two things that we have the rights to, I guess we can make a cinematic universe.
Why the hell not?
So, I don't know. Look, I liked Men in Black 3, but honestly, Men in Black 3, with their whole story, like, that whole story seemed like a perfect conclusion.
I liked it, but it seemed like they were trying really hard to get a third movie out with it. Mm-hmm. And they managed to pull it off in spite of themselves, I think, not due to any kind of... They pulled it off because of Tommy Lee Jones and Josh Brolin. Mm-hmm. That's why they pulled that fucking movie off. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think... I think that franchise has ran its course, unfortunately.
Well, Zed's dead now, right?
Yeah, Rip.
So,
yeah,
like...
He's dead. Because if you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball.
But you can't dodge death.
Exactly.
You can't dodge death's sweet embrace.
Thank you, Captain Morbid. But yeah, so, yeah, this is a thing that they're wanting to happen. I don't think that it will.
It would be the most unfunny abomination ever passed off as a comedy. I'll say that right now. That's not even hyperbole on my part. This idea reeks so much of being thought up in committee, and it doesn't seem to generate from
a committee of what would be the operable question here?
Morons, crazy people,
simpletons, cretins.
I mean, it just seems so designed by committee. It seems like there's not a spark of creative thought put into this, that if it were to actually happen, it would be the most unfunny, trying too hard piece of quote-unquote comedic cinema.
What I think they did, this is what I think they did. They took an intern, they blindfolded him. They put him in like a small, like say a walk-in closet or whatever. Mm-hmm. They had him pick out a slip of paper from a hat with the name of a franchise on it. Mm-hmm. They spun him around and they had him stick said franchise onto the wall where the name of another franchise was written. Mm. And that's how they came up with their crossover idea.
Like, this is just...
Or maybe some kind of random program. I don't know. I don't know. It seems like this is one of those things, like when you try too hard to do something, and you're kind of like in this insulated bubble from yourself. You're like, oh, this is going to be great. It's a really great idea, and it's going to be awesome. And then like someone who hasn't lived inside their own head for the last, 5-10 years says, dude, what the fuck, man?
Sounds stupid.
Yeah. This is one of those. I mean, this is the equivalent of wanting to make your own homemade pizza while high on PCP, cocaine, heroin, and pot at the same time, using a gas oven, in a room full of hand grenades. This is the pinnacle of stupidity, which is why I think it may actually happen, now that I think about it. But yeah, it's a thing that they want to do, and it will be another movie that I look forward to ignoring.
It's such a shame, though, that has to come as a Men in Black movie. Those are generally entertaining, if nothing else.
I don't know.
It's just a shame that Sony's insanity has to like ruin Men in Black.
So like, what would it be like? 21 Jump Black? Men in Black Street? Now it's just like sounding about a movie about an inner city school teacher, but still, I mean,
I don't know. Is Edward James Olmos available?
Why the fuck not? Why the fuck not?
But moving on from this, what is sure to be a cinematic abomination, we move.
Good news.
No. Before we get to that, I want to talk about more Sony insanity.
Oh, God damn it, Mike.
Well, they keep doing stupid things. We're talking about, so I mentioned we're going to get to Sony superhero stuff.
Right. Yeah.
So there were rumors that that Sony and Marvel were in talks to try to get Spider-Man and Avengers 2. Those obviously have fizzled. Doesn't appear as if that's actually going to happen. But apparently Marvel is very serious about wanting Spider-Man to be in their Civil War movie. And Sony is actually going through a bit of a crisis right now with hackers. And a bunch of emails between Sony and Marvel were released, basically with Marvel asking, hey, let's work out something so we can use Spider-Man in Civil War. Apparently these emails also even put up put forward the possibility of Marvel making a brand new Spider-Man trilogy that Sony would get all the money from.
Look, you're drunk, Sony. Just go home. We'll drive your car home for you. Okay? Just stop. We'll step in. We'll give you the money.
According to the Wall Street Journal, talks between Marvel and Sony, quote, broke down for some unknown reason.
I like to think it's when, like, some Sony exec replied to this long, thoughtful email from Marvel with a picture of his cock.
And instead, Sony has decided to take their plans for Spider-Man into an animated movie, directed by the guy who directed the Lego movie.
Okay.
So Sony saw this thing where Marvel was like, look, we recognize you have the legal rights to the character for movies. We want to see this franchise done right. Let us do it. You'll get all the money. Let us use Spider-Man to flesh out the Marvel Cinematic Universe in Civil War. We want what's best for everyone. And Sony's like, fuck you! Lego movie guy! Make us a comedy animated film!
Jesus.
Apparently next month, Sony is holding what's called a, quote, Spidey Summit to try to decide what they're gonna what their long-term plan is. Cause right now, it's clear that the rebooted series, the Amazing Spider-Man series, is done. They obviously have no confidence in it, which is a shame. Honestly, I think they should have just stuck to their vision and said, we're going to keep Atlas, but they're not, and everything seems in a free fall. So yeah, Sony is just insane, and I think you're right. Sony responded to Marvel with a cock pick.
Probably with like little googly eyes, like on the head. Like, just like, kind of like stuck there. Mr. Happy says no.
It's either that or some Sony exec called up some Marvel exec and he was drunk. He's like, how dare you say such things? What? No, you fuck off! And then he hung up.
Yeah.
And so, Sony, God damn it. But yes, it's not all bad news. Jack, I'm gonna let you take point on this one as this is more your domain than mine.
Well, I'll start off with a brief introduction for the next two segments to a degree. Mike and I have had this long-standing discussion, about this kind of almost parallel course our two favorite movie franchises have taken They're both retardedly old, and they've never really lined up all that well in terms of like release times usually. But
it would have happened. I think when a couple years back, but Godzilla got pushed a year late.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. But it was announced on December 7th, Pearl Harbor Day. I just realized this, that Toho is going to make a new Godzilla movie. Now, when this information was first brought to me, I, squealed like a little bitch. Yeah, there's been no other information really released about it yet. And I see one thing that actually kind of has me concerned about this, kind of a fly in the ointment, so to speak, and I'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, the overall thing is, new Godzilla movie will be coming, and they're going to start filming it next year, 2015, with a release in 2016 is what they are saying. Now that kind of disappoints me. I was hoping for a holiday 2015 release, because I know Toho does not take very long to film their fucking movies usually. And I also know that Toho always releases a Godzilla movie in December. So, this means it'll probably, unfortunately, be December of 2016. Now, of course, this early, there's no mention of a U.S. theatrical release. I kind of don't see it happening.
I could, just because of the Edwards Godzilla movie being such a moneymaker. I could see some studios being like, yeah, we'll throw it on. Maybe people will see it just because Godzilla.
Well, I could, yeah, definitely I can see that. But what I'm concerned about maybe is Warner Brothers or Legendary having some kind of legal issue to where Toho wouldn't be allowed to.
Unless Legendary and Warner Brothers get the domestic rights to, you can release it in the States as long as it's through us.
Right, and that might happen unless they're concerned with people getting confused, because stupid. But I could see Warner and Legendary wanting this film released in the U.S. theatrically, simply to keep Godzilla in the public consciousness until 2018, when their next Godzilla movie comes out. So, for the first time ever, we're going to have two Godzilla series running concurrently, from two different studios on basically two different continents. No, I'm not saying Japan's a continent for anyone out there who wants to get to be a smartass with me. It's part of Asia. Look it up. Anyways, so, they haven't mentioned any plot details or anything like that. There's evidently going to be a life-size Godzilla head put up in Japan on top of I forget, it said which building it is. It's going to be put on top of a building, and it's going to be looking down over the city. And the height of the building is supposed to be about 40 meters tall, which is, I forget what that is in real measurement, but it's going to be roughly 40 meters tall, which is around about the same height of the Godzilla from, say, the early 60s to late 70s. So that's going to be cool. Now, the one thing that has me concerned about this is Toho says they haven't decided if this is going to be CGI or suitmation. Now,
suitmation?
Right, the dude in the
Is that a word?
Yes, that's a word. Now this concerns me because Toho has never considered doing a Godzilla movie in all CGI. Their more recent efforts, they've always used a mixture, CGI and practical effects. If they're going to do Godzilla entirely in CGI, I'm very concerned. If they do this in all CGI, that's going to take away half the reason why I want to see this movie happen. I mean, the CGI in the recent American Godzilla movie was great. I'm not going to deny that. And they even at times tried to make it look like a guy in a suit, which was really cool and kind of funny in a lot of ways, and it was great and it worked for that movie. But at the same time, it doesn't have that same feel to it that, the quote unquote suitmation has. It doesn't have the same feel to it that practical effects have.
So, just generally speaking, in your experience as a fan, what is the quality of Toho's CGI capabilities? Okay, so that answers that.
I mean, they've had some. Okay,
they're not ILM, is what you're saying.
Right, exactly. Okay, here's the thing. I mean, the budget for your average Godzilla movie is about anywhere from they range from 25 million on up to I think like 35 or something like that. Okay, and then you compare that to the budget for an American TV commercial, practically, and it's crazy. But
I think NBC spends more money on their Sunday Night Football opening.
Right? Yeah. These movies are low budget because, and I'm not knocking them for it. I think American movies have too much money thrown into them personally. And that's why we've kind of got this glut of copycat movies because they keep wanting to make what's successful because they invest so much into them. So there's no risks being taken anymore, hardly. But, Toho's CGI is good. It's competent. It's not on the level of, as you said, they're no ILM. They're competent for what they do and for the purpose they serve. Normally, they don't do Godzilla himself as CGI. They've started doing CGI for like Mothra and Ghidorah. They started doing CGI for those and like having some of the effects be CGI here and there. Godzilla himself, though, normally is not. In Godzilla Final Wars, which was the most recent one that they released in 2005 here in the U.S., Godzilla himself was, suit guy. Most of the other monsters were too, but again, they had Mothra and like the wings on Ghidorah or whatever be CGI, and it worked. They also had one other monster is CGI, and they did it on purpose, and that was Zilla. Zilla was the Sony Pictures Godzilla from 1998. And they had Godzilla fight him, and that lasted all of about 10 seconds, and, Zilla blew up in a pile of chunks, basically. And that was a good thing. And I think they deliberately made him CGI because the original 98 movie Godzilla was CGI. And I think they might have deliberately also made it look like shit. But yeah, Toho CGI is not up to the same level as American CGI. They've always said, like, okay, this whole thing, and this is a large part of why this disturbs me so much. The whole practical effects tradition at Toho Studios, it goes back so many years, like probably before maybe even the grandparents of some of our listeners were born, to like, the late 40s, and, the whole monster suit thing, that started, with Godzilla in 1954. But a lot of the guys who are alive now and doing this for Toho are the sons and the grandsons of these first generation. It's like an art that's passed down. I mean, you talk about taking pride in what you're doing. You don't get any more prideful than what they put into these things, and it does show. Like, okay, yeah, sometimes it's just like with American practical effects technicians. Sometimes things get bollocksed up and people get upset or angry or it looks shitty. But that's not the fault of the people doing it. That's the fault of the studio saying, okay, well, we can't do this because of this, that, or the other reason. And if you're taking these guys out of the loop and you're putting in these CGI artists, they're probably just, if that's what they do, they're probably just going to get, graphic design artists or whatever, CGI animators, what the fuck ever the official title for these guys is, and having them do the CGI, and that scares the living shit out of me.
Mm-hmm.
I am excited for this movie, but I am so fucking excited for this movie, but at the same time, I am scared shitless depending on which way they go with this.
Okay, so I got a question about the tone of the movie. I think it's safe to say, if the box office numbers are any indication, that most people listening to this episode, they probably saw the recent the Gareth Edwards Godzilla movie,
right,
that came out this past year. So if that is their main exposure to Godzilla, what differences can they expect in a Toho Godzilla movie? Like, honestly, I know that they haven't released any plot information, so I'm asking for like a broad brush, tonal differences, that sort of thing. What can people expect from a Toho Godzilla movie that will be different from what we saw in the American version?
Well, and that brings up something also that I forgot to mention, just to clarify. Now, the movie that Toho was doing is not in any way, shape, form, or fashion related to the movie Gareth Edwards made. It is not in the same universe. There is nothing in common. It is a separate...
There's no continuity or canon
exactly,
shared, yeah.
Exactly. Now, that being said, the Japanese Godzilla movies are similar in a lot of ways to the American one, but they're also very different.
Well, I know that Gareth Edwards was a fan of the Toho ones, and he tried to emulate the Toho style and tone in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and he did so fairly successfully.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, with the Toho Godzilla movies, they've never been afraid to be goddamn ridiculous. I think that's the major difference.
Godzilla's little dance in space?
Not even just that. Like, even when they're trying to be serious with it. Like, okay, Godzilla Final Wars was a quote-unquote serious Godzilla movie. I mean, they didn't have Godzilla doing stupid shit like hopping up and down or flying in the air, sliding on his tail and doing flying jump kicks and all that retarded shit. They didn't have any of that. But at the same time, you had like this Japanese guy who I guess he's trying to look like fucking Japanese David Bowie, who was an alien, and, all these fucking monsters just rampaging around, all this other shit. A guy who looked like Sergeant Slaughter flying around in a giant, what looks like almost like a submarine with battleship guns and a giant goddamn drill on the front of it. Toho movies, they don't care. I mean, it's Japanese science fiction in the sense that they're not afraid to get crazy, and if they can find a way to cram
the wall,
right, and if they can find a way to cram a giant robot into something, they will.
Jet Jaguar.
Yeah, sadly.
So if a Gundam shows up in the middle of this to fight Godzilla, we should all just take that in stride?
Well, they've never actually had anything. The closest to that would be Mechagodzilla, I suppose, but the design of Mechagodzilla is nothing close to a Gundam. But I mean, hey, anything goes. It was a quote from Toho in their press release that kind of had me like, what? Okay, the whole thing had been, they had made Godzilla 2000 on the heels of the 98 movie when Toho got like pissed. Like, oh my god, what did you do to our fucking monster, you assholes? And so they made, Godzilla 2000. Well, now they released a statement on this one that said, the time has come to make a Godzilla movie that does not bow down to the Hollywood film. And it's like, what? So that has kind of like had me thinking. I'm like, alright, so the Hollywood film, I mean, okay, you willingly sold the rights to let them make this movie. Why are you acting pissed off about it?
I don't think they're acting pissed off. I think they're just, honestly, the way that it comes off is just, it's coattail riding.
Right, exactly.
Which seems strange because it's Toho's franchise, but they weren't doing anything with it. They gave it to Legendary and Warner Brothers. They made a pretty good movie. And now that, that movie made a lot of money, now they're like, well, hey, shit, maybe we can make another Godzilla movie.
Right, and yeah, basically, yeah, because of the performance of the Gareth Edwards movie, which far exceeded most people's expectations.
I remember people were absolutely shocked. Like, Godzilla was the #1 movie in the country for a while.
Yeah, exactly. So, they're like, hey, let's do it. And Toho had never said that they would not do another Godzilla movie. They had said he would be on a 5 to 10 year hiatus, and it's going to turn out at the end, when all is said and done, that it's been a little bit longer than that. But, whatever. But yeah, Toho is essentially writing their own coattails.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird, like, Gareth Edwards made this movie that most people agreed was, if not very good, then at least certainly watchable, and performed very well worldwide. And now Toho's like, he made this using their intellectual property that they, sold him the rights to use, and now they're like, hey, let's do us better than he did us, and in the non-sexual sense. But yeah, so then they're doing this. They're essentially writing their own coattails, which makes me think, think back to 98, 99, 2000. It's like, okay, well, was that because they really thought that Sony and Columbia had bollocksed up Godzilla? Or was it that they just wanted to ride coattails? And I'm thinking in retrospect,
I don't think anyone wanted to ride Roland Emmerich's coattails.
Well, true, but at the same time, that movie had it was popular at the time by the people who didn't know any better.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, at the time, some people were fooled into thinking that's what Godzilla was. And
could it be a feeling threatened thing? It's like, okay.
Probably.
I mean, when Toho saw the 1998 Godzilla movie, they're like, okay, this is fucking amateur hour. But then when they saw Edwards' Godzilla movie, maybe like, holy shit, this guy actually knows what he's doing, and now they're feeling a bit threatened that someone else is doing Godzilla right for once, besides just them.
Probably. And that's also kind of what has me worried. Going back to the CGI thing, is like, if they're wanting to show off, because another thing that they went into on this is the advancements in, they feel that they can do this better than they've ever done it, more or less, because of advancements in special effects in Japanese studios. And
from what you've told me, that's not a very high bar to step over.
In a lot of cases, no, it's not. Like I said, it's competent, but it's not the actual quality of the CGI itself that has made it work for them, because based on the quality alone, it's not always there. I mean, it's decent, but they're no ILM. Mm-hmm. But it's the way that they've used it. They've always used it effectively and sparingly to augment what they've done with the practical effects, and that's the way it should be done. And it's worked for them for the last, the 10 years preceding, when they were doing the Millennium series and everything like that. Which the Millennium series in and of itself was just a series of reboots, more or less. The damn thing rebooted more often than Sony Pictures could ever fucking reboot Spider-Man. But, so during that period, it worked well for them, and it was very cool. And they said, going forward, that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to just learn and experiment with new ways of combining practical effects and CGI in a way that brought out the best of those. And unlike, Hollywood, who's just like, CGI the fuck out of everything, Japan's like, no, let's use both, because they both have their place, and let's use them to complement each other, not fight each other. And they did it wonderfully. A lot of the installments from the Millennium series were wonderful. GMK and Final Wars were two of the really good ones. And those two became, two of my absolute favorite Godzilla movies. So for such a short span, because the Millennium series only ran from 99 to 2004. So for such a short time span to put out two really good Godzilla movies in that span, that's pretty good for them. And they put out two really good ones, and two that were decent. They only had one that was just utter shit, and that was Godzilla vs. Megaguirus. That movie sucked ass. And Godzilla 2000 was, okay. It wasn't bad. So it was a pretty good run, and they did it by combining these two techniques. And if they're going to abandon that, then I am very worried, and I will be a little bit pissed off. Well, I'll be very pissed off.
Well, I guess we'll see. They seem to be holding their cards close to their chest so far. I mean, they've got 2 years to make this thing, which seems like ample time given how you've described how they do business. So I don't think we can expect anything in terms of a concrete synopsis anytime soon, but it's definitely interesting. Look, if this gets released in Canada, I know I'll see it.
Oh, I'll definitely see it. I'll suck a dick on a street corner for a ticket if I have to. I will have no fucking shame.
But, at the beginning of the segment, Jack mentioned, 2 film series, both his favorite series, my favorite series, kind of running concurrently. My favorite, film series, if I had to name one, would be, the James Bond series.
I thought you were going to say Harry Potter.
Oh, fuck Harry Potter. No. Like, okay, there are a lot of film series that I am a fan of. I like Star Wars, I like Star Trek, Indiana Jones, I like, I'll even go to bat for the Michael Bay Transformers movies. But when it comes to, what is my all-time favorite film series, it's Bond, bar none. It's one of those ones, it's one of those film series where it's got sentimental value, to me. Both my grandfather and my father were big Bond fans, so that was obviously a bonding moment.
No pun intended.
Ha! Yeah. So, but, it's, James Bond is always a big deal in my house. My dad and I have seen all the, Bond movies together since, GoldenEye. And GoldenEye was the first one I saw. Just a really, I love it. And, unlike Godzilla, Godzilla, the Gareth Edwards movie kind of revitalized it. Bond's been going strong since Casino Royale, when Daniel Craig replaced, Pierce Brosnan as Bond. Quantum of Solace was not the best thing in the world. I still think people give it, it's got a bad rap that I don't think it fully deserves.
It was okay. I mean, it wasn't bad, I didn't think. I kind of liked it.
Quantum of Solace is a great movie. It is fucking genius when you consider that, Daniel Craig admitted in an interview that they were writing the script as they were filming it because the damn writer's strike at the moment, kind of cropped up and meant that the movie was like a third finished when it came time to actually film the damn thing. So they were making crap up. They were literally making crap up, like, as they went. So when you compare that, the fact that it has anything resembling a coherent plot is just mind-blowing. But, things really rebound in a big way. Everyone seems to love Skyfall. I love Skyfall. Skyfall actually surpassed James Cameron's Avatar as the highest grossing film in, British history. Sadly did not happen in the United States because stop watching James Cameron's Pocahontas movie. It's not good. Once you get past the CGI, it's really not a good movie. But that's a rant for another day when Avatar 2 finally, comes out. Point being, Bond, Skyfall, huge hit, got people talking. Unfortunately, Jack, it seems like things won't line up again as, the new film is scheduled for a 2015 release. And that is, the new film is, of course, SPECTRE. Now, if anyone listening to this has any sort of knowledge about, the lore of James Bond, SPECTRE is gonna raise some flags, because SPECTRE is perhaps Bond's greatest nemesis. SPECTRE is a terrorist organization headed by Ernst Stavro Blofeld, who many consider Bond's arch nemesis, his single greatest enemy. Blofeld, of course, parodied by Austin Powers, and he was the source for Dr. Evil. But basically, anytime you see a villain in film who is hiding his face, who is stroking a cat, they are referencing Blofeld from the original Bond films. And so there was a bit of a legal hang-up about basically concerning the rights to the Bond film Thunderball. The Bond story Thunderball, I'm sorry. Ian Fleming basically long story short, Ian Fleming sold the rights to make the movie for Thunderball to someone else entirely before he sold the rest of the film rights to, Eon Productions, which makes the Bond movies. So because Spectre and Blofeld were in, Thunderball, when there was a falling out between Eon and the rights holders to Thunderball, there was this big thing where nobody could, basically the legality of Spectre and all of their related characters were up in the air, so that's why they've been absent since, Diamonds Are Forever, the last Sean Connery movie, I think, was the last one where Spectre had a significant, presence. So, but all that's been settled now. There was a settlement, basically, where Eon Productions got the rights to Thunderball, got the rights to all those characters, so now Spectre's back in play. And it seems interesting that the first film that they make after they get those rights is Spectre. Now the thing is, Blofeld hasn't been listed on the cast list so far. The main villain of the, film is,
Your face?
Pardon?
Your face?
No, it is, it is a character by the name of Franz Oberhauser, and he is being played by, Christoph Waltz, who, many will, remember as the SS agent Hans Landa in Inglorious Bastards. A lot of people are excited about that because people are like, Christoph Waltz as a Bond villain, sign me up, and I agree, that's great. There are, rumors that Franz Oberhauser will be a alias for Blofeld and that Christoph Waltz will be playing Blofeld. I'm not sold on that. The Eon has proven, recently with how they've treated the Daniel Craig Bond films that, they see it more as a continuing series. It used to be that, there would be an overarching Bond continuity. For example, Tracy Bond, Bond's wife, he's married to her, in the movie On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and she also dies in that film. And then various other Bonds, Sean Connery's Bond, Roger Moore's Bond, Timothy Dalton's Bond, Pierce Brosnan's Bond, have all referenced Tracy Bond as part of the backstory. So there is an overarching continuity, but each film was more or less standalone. But the Daniel Craig era seems to be much more of an arcing narrative. Quantum of Solace picked up right when Casino Royale left off. There was less of a connection with Skyfall, but, you still kind of saw the conclusion of the relationship Bond had with M from Casino Royale through Skyfall, so there was still an overarching story there. And what I'm getting with all this is that just because the film's named Spectre doesn't mean Blofeld is necessarily going to make an appearance, at least not in this film, because if this is the start of a new quote-unquote story that can span several films, they might hold off with Blofeld until a later point. So, Christoph Waltz being Franz Oberhauser, I'm content to just assume that that's who his character is, and that Blofeld will show up either as a surprise in this film or later down the road. I do think Blofeld is inevitable. You really can't do Spectre without doing Blofeld, but I don't necessarily think that Waltz is going to be him. Don't get me wrong, I think Christoph Waltz would make an excellent Blofeld, but I also think he'd make an excellent Bond villain in general. I don't think he necessarily has to be Blofeld. So, I guess best I can describe my feelings for this movie is I'm giddy as fuck, honestly. classic Bond villain in the organization of SPECTRE, the possibility of the return of a long-standing Bond villain, the villain many people consider his arch nemesis. I can't begin to tell you how happy I am. When I saw the poster, because SPECTRE's emblem has always been an octopus, and the poster for this Bond movie is a gunshot through glass, so it's a bullet hole in a plane of glass, and the cracks for the bullet hole have formed octopus legs, so it's kind of like a subliminal octopus, and I squeed when I saw that. I squeed like a bitch, to quote you, Jack, so. That's me done geeking out on Bond for the moment.
Which, the octopus thing, yeah, also good enough for the NSA to put on the side of their satellites when they launched them.
Well, see, that's what was made it so funny, because the NSA was literally like, acting like a Bond villain organization.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like something one of us would do, but, you know, neither of us are in the NSA, probably for those same reasons.
But, we don't know much about it besides the cast list and, the premise, given a cryptic message from an unlikely source sets James Bond navigating the layers of a sinister organization known as SPECTRE as M. And of course this is going to be, Ralph Fiennes' M, Judi Dench's M, passed on in Skyfall. And so as M continues to fight political pressure that threatens the future of MI6, Bond draws closer to uncovering a hidden truth that threatens to destroy everything he has fought to protect.
The whole, now, how many more movies are they going to be able to have Daniel Craig for?
I believe when they originally signed him, it was for 3 films, and then after Skyfall, he signed a 2-film extension.
Okay, so at least Spectre and one after it.
At least, yes.
I mean, and my asking that's not just prompted by contractual obligations. It's kind of like, well, he's not getting any younger. You know, he's certainly fit enough for the movies, but it's kind of like, well, our definition of fit enough for service is a James Bond, and Hollywood's, idea of that, you know, maybe 2 different things.
It is, where he is 46, so he's pushing 50, so that might be a good point. I honestly don't see him signing any more extensions. The great thing about Eon Productions is that it's the same family that has been making the Bond movies, since Dr. No, the first one. And so, because of that, there's a lot of people involved who sort of have long memories, who remember back. And I think they're all aware of how the Bond films suffered when they kept Roger Moore on long past his Best Buy date. Truth be told, they probably should have brought Timothy Dalton in 2 films earlier. But as it was, they kept Roger Moore on until into his mid-60s, and it was just embarrassing. So I don't think they're going to make that mistake again. I see Craig bowing out after the film following Spectre.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd say he's around for 2 more movies. Pierce Brosnan was in his 50s, I think, when they let him go. So that seems to be how they do things. And then we can all have the discussion of who's going to play Bond afterwards. Which will be sad, because a lot of people consider Daniel Craig the best Bond. I wouldn't go so far as to say he's the best, but I'd put him in my top 3, maybe even top 2.
I gotcha. Now, do you think, so with that in mind, now do you expect them to possibly do another kind of like a reboot kind of a deal when they change Bonds, or do you think they'll just do it the old way and just keep the whole thing going with just a different face, pay no attention, nothing to see here?
I think they'll do that, honestly. They kind of rebooted things. They kind of rebooted the long-running narrative with Casino Royale. Which they kind of had to do, because Casino Royale is Bond's first mission, and a big part of the plot of Casino Royale is how Bond is, prepared, in a way.
Right.
So he makes mistakes, that sort of thing, and so they had to sort of bring Bond back, make him a sort of younger character for that movie. And so so you could say that the original chronology, it goes from Dr. No to, Die Another Day. And then everything from the Daniel Craig era is a new chronology, but I don't see them, quote unquote, rebooting anything following Daniel Craig. I just think they're gonna do what they've traditionally always done. They're just gonna bring someone else in and just like, oh, whatever, new guy playing Bond. I mean, it's happened so often now that it's not even a thing. Like, it's not something that anyone, like, holds against the film. Like, it's just happened. It's like, okay, that's just how the Bond franchise works, and people generally go along with it. So, I don't see them making a big deal about switching Bonds again. You know, although it is my unofficial theory that James Bond is in fact a Time Lord.
Oh yeah, I mean that's obvious.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, maybe his regeneration from Pierce Brosnan to Daniel Craig, you know, wasn't quite as smooth as his other ones, so, you know, he had to go back to basics for a bit, but, you know. I think that makes sense. You know, James Bond's a Time Lord. A Time Lord who has a ancestral estate in Scotland, because why not?
Well, I mean, you know, it worked for the Highlanders.
Did it really work, though? Did it really work?
And of course, you know, by Scotland, I mean Zeist.
Again, I'll have to ask you, did it really work?
Yes, sir. Yes, it did.
Okay. But yeah, that's Spectre. It's slated for an October 23rd, 2015 release. Not much to say at the moment, other than, Dave Bautista, pro wrestler known as perhaps Bootista to many of you, will be playing a henchman called Mr. Hicks.
Or the one non-shitty character in Guardians of the Galaxy.
So, yeah, that's Spectre. I hope to geek out about it, as we learn more. What else we got?
Let me take a gander here. Let's see. Okay, now you mentioned something about, since we're on the topic of, changing actors and all this other shit, blah, blah, blah. Marvel has released some confirmations for actors for their future films.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So, Marvel, of course, has every film till like 2050 fucking planned out. And, we've got some, casting confirmations. I guess the headliner, due to the high-profile nature of the actor in question, Benedict Cumberbatch, known for Sherlock Holmes in the rebooted Sherlock series on BBC, also made famous by his portrayal of Khan in Star Trek Into Darkness, is going to be playing Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange, of course, is a magic-based superhero from the Marvel Universe. So yeah, Benedict Cumberbatch playing Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange is a, magical-based superhero in the Marvel Universe. I have to admit, despite my preference for fantasy literature, kind of like that sort of thing, never really got into much to Doctor Strange beyond what he did with other superheroes who I was paying more attention to. His latest thing I remember him doing, he helped Tony Stark regain consciousness at the beginning of the Invincible Iron Man comic book arc in 2012. So, but you know, Doctor Strange is a guy that they've name dropped in the Marvel Cinematic Universe for a while now, and it seems that it's finally happening. Benedict Cumberbatch is as good a choice as any. I think he could play the sort of aloof, mysterious kind of character that Doctor Strange is. I know you don't have as much familiarity with some of the more obscure Marvel comic characters, but just what are your thoughts, Jack, on Doctor Strange? Benedict Cumberbatch.
Well, I like Cumberbatch. I mean, if he's playing him, it's probably going to be fairly decent. He's one of those actors that, like, if you hear he's been cast for something, you kind of already have an idea of what the character traits are going to be to a degree. It's like, when you see Cumberbatch's name, well, the first thing you think is, oh my god, seriously? Benedict Cumberbatch? What the fuck? But it's
the most British name of all time.
Once you get past that, I mean, your thoughts are, okay, yeah, well, I pretty much know what I'm signing on signing on for here. So, and that's a good thing in this particular case. The character himself, I don't know, sounds kind of dumb. I don't really care, but I'll see it because of Booty Dick Cunty Snatch, and why not? So that's the thing. Now you said that there was another. Hello?
Hello. Oh, sorry.
Jesus Christ.
I just wanted to say something else on Doctor Strange.
Okay.
He's a bit of a, because Doctor Strange has abilities that sort of separate him from the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Most of the Marvel heroes have science or technology-based powers. I'd say Thor and Doctor Strange are the exceptions. And, Doctor Strange can get into some pretty weird territory from what I've seen of him. I'm really interested because we talked about how Marvel movies have become cookie cutter to a degree. I'm curious to see if they use Doctor Strange as a means to break out of that, because he certainly affords them that opportunity from a narrative perspective. Whether or not that direction is someone's particular cup of tea, I think everyone can agree that, a fresh change of pace, a fresh injection of life into the cinematic universe wouldn't be the worst thing. Just to have a film or two that perhaps stands out from the rest.
You're probably right in that they could use it to break out. I don't think they will, because what they're doing makes them money. And why change? There's really no incentive for them to change it up. I don't see them really doing it. I think you're going to see the character. They're probably going to, if anything, they're probably going to alter the character as needed, alter the plot as needed, to get it to fit into their mold.
But see, I don't think they can, though, because Benedict Cumberbatch doesn't fit that mold as an actor. He's not Chris Hemsworth or Chris Evans, where he's a physically imposing guy.
Well, I mean, their mold isn't necessarily based upon a particular type of actor or even character. It's just more or less like how I don't know. It's hard for me to actually...
How the stories are structured.
Right, exactly.
Okay. I get what you're saying on that.
And, so you can expect, they'll work in the explosions and however they need to do it.
Doctor Strange, a Michael Bay production.
Pretty much. I mean, they'll get their action in there. They'll tailor the plot towards their formula. And I'm sure they'll find a way to make it work for Cumberbatch. I mean, I've never said even recently that Marvel is incompetent. Quite to the contrary, they're very competent. I just question a lot of their decisions lately. But, they're not incompetent. So they'll pull it off. They'll make it work for their mold and everything. They're not going to, I don't see them taking any risks though, because they have no incentive to do so.
I agree they have no incentive, and because they don't have an incentive, you're probably right. I'm just saying, it would be nice if they just, did something different. I guess. Moving on to the other names, that were released. Kristen Ritter is playing Jessica Jones. Kristen Ritter, she played, Jane, Margolis on, Breaking Bad. The film she's done, What Happens in Vegas, 27 Dresses, Confessions of a Shopaholic, and She's Out of My League. She's also done work on TV on Veronica Mars, Gilmore Girls, Gossip Girl, Gravity, and Till Death.
So lots of crap.
Yes, she is playing, Jessica Jones, as I said. Jessica Jones is, she's had a few aliases in Marvel. She's one of those characters that kind of switches up their superhero identity, but I'd say that probably Power Woman is her most... Power Woman or Jewel are probably her two most famous superheroes.
Power Woman?
Power Woman, yes.
Really?
Yes.
That's a thing.
That's the thing.
Power Woman, huh?
Yeah.
Well, I wonder who they were trying to emulate there. Power Woman. Well,
Yeah.
That's all kinds of levels of special.
Yeah. The movie is going to be called AKA Jessica Jones. It's going to be, I'm just kind of skimming the synopsis. It's basically going to look at Jessica Jones as sort of a private eye type character, which is in keeping with some of her, stories. As I said, Jessica Jones is sort of a character who kind of switches between identities, and as a result, she really doesn't have one. And I did misspeak. It's not going to be a movie. It's going to be a Netflix series based within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So it's going to be her as a private detective. I don't know how that's going to play. I guess it's the best way to actually handle it, because Jessica Jones, who's really lacked a strong superheroine identity, the best thing to probably do is to just call her Jessica Jones, because that's the one consistent. Whether she's Power Woman, whether she's Jewel, whether she's Nitrous, she is Jessica Jones. So that might be the best way to handle it.
Power Woman, Jesus Christ.
Hey, I don't make the things. Anyway.
I wasn't blaming you as I was sitting over here saying, Jesus Christ, Mike, why Power Woman? What the fuck were you thinking? No, I was not. Calm your tits, sir. Calm your tits.
Other casting news. Mike Coulter is playing, Luke Cage. Luke Cage, you'll love this. His superhero identity is Power Man.
Oh, of course. Makes perfect sense to me.
I'm scanning here. No news on whether or not his thing is going to be a film or a series. Okay, it's going to be a film. And I'm interested to see how they handled Luke Cage, because Luke Cage had one of the more interesting, story arcs in the Marvel Civil War. Story. The thing that I'm a bit disappointed is that we're probably not going to see him in that, because it seems as if the Luke Cage movie will debut after the, Civil War movie, which is why I think Civil War should be more than one movie, because it's such an expansive plot. You could easily make a trilogy out of it if you wanted to. So I think it's gonna be a shame that we're not gonna see Luke Cage in, Civil War, but I can get on board with a, Luke Cage movie in general. Again, Mike Coulter seems to be a relative unknown, just kind of going through his filmography. He's been in a few movies that seem notable, but he's always kind of had bit parts. He was in $1 Million Baby, Men in Black 3, Zero Dark 30, and he's also done voice work for some video games, for some Halo video games, so that's interesting. But I don't think that Coulter's relative obscurity is necessarily a bad thing. That generally tends to work best when dealing with superheroes, so people see the hero and not necessarily as the villain.
Right, I got you.
I don't mean the villain, I mean the actor. So like when you see it, you're not like, when you see, I'm trying to think of an example. Luke Cage is an African-American superhero, so let's just say that they had got Will Smith. You're just gonna see Will Smith. Right?
Right.
And so now if you get Mike Coulter, who's unknown, you don't see, instead of seeing, oh, it's Will Smith playing Luke Cage, you just see Luke Cage because you don't know really Mike Coulter's body of work. So I'm excited I'm excited about Luke Cage. I do admit I look forward to seeing his, because I generally do like the stuff that he's appeared in. The last big thing, and this is kind of, we all knew this was coming, Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool.
Yeah, I mean that's it's nice to get the confirmation. To at least for us to not have to have a show of an hour and a half of me screaming what the fuck. Which I can do pretty much at will anyways. But yeah, it's not a surprise. It just kind of solidifies, at least in some ways, things are still right in the universe.
Well, I think everyone agreed that Ryan Reynolds was the perfect choice to play Deadpool. I know a lot of people were excited when they announced his casting for Wolverine Origins, and Wolverine Origins buggered it all up.
Right. Well, yeah.
But, the casting was always solid, and it's good to know that his role in that abysmal Green Lantern movie didn't hurt his chances, as Deadpool. Of course, this is different from the others. Those other actors we mentioned are all going to be part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Deadpool is part of the X-Men family of characters, so he's going to be a Fox property, and I think that's a good thing. After a few flounders, a few mishaps, Fox seems to have righted the ship for their last 2 X-Men movies, so I've got confidence that Deadpool will be done right if that concept shot was any indication that we talked about a few weeks back.
Well, they at least haven't gone insane.
Well, yeah, exactly. They're not Sony. They're not flailing wildly and just making fools of themselves. Marvel isn't begging Fox to give them the X-Men back so they can do it properly.
Yeah. You're drunk, Sony. Go home.
Indeed. I think that wraps up our superhero news, actually.
Yeah, and that was what we had for this week, sir.
Oh, okay. Kind of a short show, but it is what it is.
It's quality over quantity.
Indeed. But, as we get more from Godzilla, as we get more from James Bond, and even as we get more from a few of these, Marvel projects, I'm sure we'll have plenty to rant and rave about in the future.
Indeed. The Godzilla masturbation hour.
So that does it for episode 44 of Bags, as I try to talk over Jack's lustful moans. You can catch us on Twitter at a Geek Show. Send us an email, basically a geekshow@gmail.com.
And staring into your bathroom window.
Staring into your bathroom window on iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher. For Jack, this is Mike. Signing off.
And next time, buy 2-ply, cheap bastards.